Hello and most welcome to 1848 of our H series. We will today continue with The Way the World Ends by Jorunn Okland. Last time we went through how the Hegelian terms sort of covered everything. In the Hegelian take of the world, there is no movement. Everything is strictly decided from the very beginning. Thesis, antithesis are following suit, leaving no room for flexibility, movement, free will. It is absolutely fixated. This fixatedness, I would say, is very obvious in modern day physics as well. Earlier on, we listened, me and my colleague, to an interview made with the famed physicist Brian Greene. And according to him, everything is determinedly fixated from the very outset of the world. After the Big Bang, nothing new can enter. Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis is closely regulating every last particle of this here world, leaving us as nothing more than senseless, unconscious pawns. Having no choice other than to perform what the Big Bang, so to speak, has demanded. We also saw an interesting metonymically connection in Marx's version of early on of the angels in Revelation 5:2 and 10:1, and there in his version mixed and merged into a Herr Herzl, Mr. Herzl, and the Revelation's Zion is changed aptly enough to Zurich. I think that was rather jolly sense of humor. I also realize where this is coming from. This must be somewhere in the 1840s, 50s, I'd guess. The idea of a higher reality of heaven, and that the Bible might be to some extent carrying some leverage, was already abandoned by the intelligentsia of the day.
This was after the supposed end of the world in 1844.
Very good.
I think he published this in 1845, so one year later.
Perfect. Thank you. It also happened to me many years ago when I I had to analyze a poem by, I think it was Byron, not 100% sure. The name of the poem was The Little Chimney Sweep. And it is in that poem also angels mentioned. I'll see if I can get the little chimney sweep. I'm not too keen on Googling. In this case, I think I'll do it. Oh, I'd even turn that into a movie. Mm-hmm. Chimney Sweeper. It is by William Blake. A very lovely poem. There also angels are participating, but they are there in a metaphorical sense. So even at that early time, and we're talking about late 18th century, no one in intelligentsia believed in God as anything more than a metaphor. So the angels were there to make the poem even stronger in bringing forth some sort of social criticism. The Allgemeine Literaturzeitung, and I continue my read on page 275. The Allgemeine Literaturzeitung was the forum of the young Hegelian circle that Marx and Engels devoted their book to criticizing, and the Zeitung was published in Charlottenburg. The Mass is an unfortunate translation of German Masse, which can mean both matter, as in materialism, and I need to mute my voices, and an assembly.
It's muted.
How weird! What on earth is happening?
Now it's muted.
Okay,
I muted.
I do like this then. Better check if it's.
But I have my headphones on, so it shouldn't matter.
Did you get sound in the heads?
Yes, indeed.
Okay,
So it doesn't matter.
perfect. So everything is okay then. Weird. Okay. Sorry about that. It can mean both matter, as in materialism, and an assembly of people. But for Hegelian, Geistesmenschen also had all the connotations of base, low, uncritical, etc. However, what comes out of Herr Herzl's mouth is not as impressive as the angel's words in Revelation 10:3. There, when the angel shouts like a lion roaring, the seven thunders gives solid resonance, whereas out of Herr Herzl's lion roar only comes the sound of a dove. Chirp, chirp.
Chirp, chirp.
Not very. I think you need to be muted, but your sound coming here anyway. Because we get this not very impressive indeed. This dove chirp, possibly a reference to Revelation 19:17, did not resonate all the way to Patmos, where the book of Revelation was apparently written, but only to the regions of Paphos, thus appealing more to people's feelings than to the logos and critical faculties that the young Hegelians so frequently and rhetorically appeal to. You can come in.
Patmos, pathos.
Pathos, pathos. Very good. Then there is reference to the final battle when all is united against criticism and the world will end in dissolution. It was given to the worlds in Marx's text, also represented by hostile knights,
Knights.
to fight against the holy, that is,
Holy.
the followers of criticism. The hostile knights are added into the quote of Revelation 16:14 as a specification of the daimonic spirits mentioned there, and thus are spirits of the devil going out to the whole world, and they gather to fight in the battle of the great day of God, the Almighty.
Almighty.
So there will be an Armageddon, Jesus marks, where the speculative young Hegelians will fight against the masses in order to move over to another Stufe, stage, of dialectic progression,
Progression.
whereas
whereas
the
the
rest
rest
will
will
be
be annihilated.
Oh no.
Yeah.
annihilated,
Annihilated.
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 The seven thunders that fail to resonate after the chirp, chirp,
Chirp, chirp.
do, however, return with a
Return with a
bang
bang
towards
towards
the
the
end
end
of the
of the
text,
text,
where
where
the
the
thunders start
thunders
to sing
start to sing
Dies
Dies
irae,
irae,
dies illa.
Dies illa.
Piesila.
The peace
The
stand
peace stand
borrows
borrows
language from the
language
book
from the
of
book of
Revelation
Revelation
and also
and
some
also some
expressions from
expressions from
the gospel
the
story,
gospel story,
but
but
changes the
changes the
literary
literary
characters into
characters into
specific
specific
characters
characters
in
in
Marx's
Marx's
own time.
own time.
Chirp, chirp.
Chirp chirp,
Chirp chirp,
since both
since
the
both the
appendix style
appendix style
relationship
relationship
to the
to
rest
the
of the
rest
volume,
of the volume,
the
the
language
language
and partly
and partly
characters
characters
are used
are
to
used
convey
to convey
something else.
something else.
One could say
One
that
could
the
say
book
that the
of
book of
Revelation
Revelation
as a
as
whole
a whole
serves as an
serves as an
allegory
allegory
in
in
Marx's
Marx's
text.
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 As
As
allegory,
allegory,
the
the
critical law's
critical
judgment
law's judgment
is an
is an
entertaining
entertaining
but
but
hard
hard
read,
read,
since
since
the
the
immediate
immediate
context
context
Marx
Marx
so
so
closely
closely
engages
engages
with
with
is
is
now
now
mostly
mostly
lost
lost
apart
apart
from
from
the
the
philosophical
philosophical
record,
record,
as
as
also
also
the
the
editor
editor
of
of
Karl
Karl
Marx,
Marx,
Die
Die
Frühschriften,
Schriften,
points
points
out
out
concerning the
the
Holy
Holy
Family.
Family.
Zeitbedingte,
Zeitbedingte,
heute
heute
kaum
kaum
noch
noch
verständliche
verständliche Polemik.
Noch verständliche Polemik.
Marx
Marx
shows
shows
no
no
deeper
deeper
insight
insight
into
into
the
the
content
content
of
of
the
the
biblical
biblical
look book.
book.
The title
The title
itself,
itself,
Critical Last
Critical
Judgment,
Last Judgment,
kritische jüngste
Kritische jüngste
Gericht,
Gericht,
is
is
obviously a
obviously a
combination
combination
of the
of the
theological
theological
concept
concept
of the
of the
Last
last
Judgment
judgment
and the
and the
philosophical
philosophical
concept
concept
of
of
critical
critical
judgment.
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 Both
Both
the
the
German
German
original
original
and
and
the
the
English
English
translation
translation
contain
contain
the
the
same
same
combination
combination
of
of
concepts,
concepts,
although
although
the
the
exact
exact
expression,
expression,
the
the
Last
last
Judgment,
judgment,
Bop, 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 bop.
does
does
not
not
actually
actually
occur
occur
in
in
the
the
book
book
of
of
Revelation
Revelation
itself.
itself.
5.
5.
Subtitle: Why
Why
would
would
Marx
Marx
complete the
complete
book
the book
on
on
such a
such a
biblical
biblical
note.
note.
Earlier
Earlier
in
in
the
the
book,
book,
chapter
chapter
7,
7,
Marx has
Marx has
accused
accused
Herzl
Herzl
of
of
speaking a
speaking
lot
a
of
lot of
da.
da.
In nicht
In nicht
gangbaren
gangbaren
Redensarten
Redensarten
ein
ein
Herz zu
Herz zu
trauben.
trauben.
Marx has
Marx has
chosen the
chosen the
opposite
opposite
of a
of a
non-communicative
non-communicative
genre
genre
of
of
speech
speech
himself
himself
in
in
order
order
to fight
to
back,
fight back,
namely a
namely a
biblical
biblical
genre
genre that
everyone
everyone
knows.
knows.
As
As
mentioned above,
mentioned above,
the end
the
of the
end of
world
the
was
world was
predicted
predicted in
in 1844,
1844,
Oi, oi, oi.
a date
a date
which
which
coincides with
coincides with
Marx's
Marx's
writing
writing
at,
at,
of this
of
piece.
this piece.
Oi, 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 oi.
There were
There
strong
were strong end-time
expectations around
expectations around
Kovacs
Kovac
and
and
Roland
Roland,
also
also
mentioned
mention
this in their
this in their
commentary
commentary
in
in
connection with
connection with
Revelation 10.
Revelation 10.
Adventists
Adventists
used
used
Revelation 10
Revelation
to
10
come to
to come to
terms
terms
with the
with
great
the great
disappointment,
disappointment,
the
the
failure of the
failure of the
eschatological
eschatological
events
events
to appear
to
as
appear as
predicted
predicted
in
in
1844.
1844.
What Marx
What Marx
gains within
gains with
his
his
genre choice,
genre choice,
in addition
in
to
addition to
contemporary
contemporary
relevance,
relevance,
Contemporary relevance.
is a
is a
strong effect.
strong effect.
Strong.
There's
There's
certainly a
certainly a
large
large
surplus value
surplus value
of
of
meaning
meaning
available
available
for
in the book of
revelation.
Revelation.
And Marx
And
has
Marx has
understood
understood
to
how
tap
to
this
tap this
surplus
surplus
and to put it
and to
into
put it into
service
service
his
in
own
his own
production
production
of
of
meaning and
meaning and
criticism.
criticism.
Oi, oi, oi.
But this
But this
strategy is
strategy
not
is not
without
without
risk,
risk,
Risk.
because in the
because
end
in the
it
end it
somehow
somehow
posits Marx
posits Marx
himself
himself
as the
as the
last link
last
in the
link in
chain
the chain
of
of
apocalyptic
apocalyptic
prophets.
prophets.
Hmm. Hmm.
It is
It is
noteworthy
noteworthy
that after
that
the
after the
critical
critical
last
last
judgment
judgment
follows an
follows an
historical
historical epilogue
of just
of just
2
two
lines.
it reads,
It reads,
as we
as
later
we
learned,
later learned,
it was
it
not
was
the
not
world,
the world,
but the
but the
critical
critical
Literaturzeitung
Literaturzeitung
that had
that
its
had its
last day.
last day.
Thus,
Thus,
whoever
whoever
predicts the end
predicts
of
the
the
end of
world
the world
or its
or
total
its total
reorganization
reorganization
at a
at
higher
a
level
higher level
will
will
themselves be brought
themselves
to
be
an end
brought to an end
from the post-Marxist
Marxist
perspective of the
perspective of the
21st century,
21st century.
how true
How true
indeed.
indeed.
The
The
outcome of the
outcome of the
apocalyptic battle
apocalyptic battle
between the
between the
literary,
literary,
speculative
speculative
idealists
idealists
and the
and the
historical
historical
materialists
materialists
is
is
reflected in the
reflected in the
relationship
relationship
between chapter
between
9
chapter 9
and the
and the
historical
historical
epilogue.
epilogue.
But since it
But
was not,
since it was
after
not,
all,
after all,
the end of
the
the
end of
world,
the world,
but
but
only
only
of the
of the
Literaturzeitung,
Literaturzeitung,
Literaturzeitung.
must that
must
not
that
mean that
not
the
mean that the
Armageddon,
Armageddon,
as the day
as the
of
day of
judgment
judgment
criticism,
criticism,
is still
is still
imminent,
imminent,
even
even
after
after
another
another
150
150
years,
years,
and that
and that
Marx
Marx
himself in
himself
this
in
text
this text
takes the
takes the
place of the
place of
angel
the angel
who
who
predicts
predicts
a
a
better
better
and
and
final
final
victory
victory
of the
of the
masses.
masses.
Max takes the place of the angel.
We may
We may
speculate
speculate
why
why
Marx chose
Marx
the
chose the
apocalyptic
apocalyptic
genre,
genre,
but
but
also
also
why did he
why did he
choose this
choose this
particular
particular
passages from the
passages
book
from
of
the book of
Revelation
Revelation
to
to
convey
convey
his
his
message.
message.
There are
There
other
are other
texts in the
texts in the
Bible
Bible
that
that
distinguish between
distinguish
good
between
and
good
evil
and evil
as
as
biblical
biblical
prototype for
prototype for
Rudolph,
Rudolph,
the
the
Jesus
Jesus
of the
of the
Gospels,
Gospels,
would have been
would have
much
been much
closer at
closer
hand,
at hand,
traveling
traveling around
as he
as he
also
also did,
helping the sick,
helping the sick,
poor, and
poor, and
excluded.
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 Something in the book of Revelation provided Marx with the arsenal
Arsenal
he
he
needed.
needed.
Arsenal. Arsenal.
The point
The
is
point
that
is
the
that the
meaning of
meaning
the
of the
piece
piece
cannot
cannot
be
be
found
found
in
in
the
the
19th
19th
century
century
context,
context,
which would
which
have
would have
meant
meant
that the
that the
choice
choice
of
of
biblical
biblical
text
text
would
would
have been
have been
arbitrary.
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 In
In
some
some
way,
way,
Revelation
Revelation
fitted
fitted
better
better
than the
than the
alternatives.
alternatives.
And
And
Karl
Karl
Marx
Marx
estimated
estimated
that he
that he
would
would
get
get
his
his
message
message
across
across
better
better
by
by
using
using
this
this
biblical
biblical
text
text
than not
than not
using it.
using it.
Mhm.
In
In
Revelation 10,
Revelation 10,
John the
John the
seer
seer
is
is
about
about
to
to
write
write
down
down
his
his
vision,
vision,
but
but
is
is
told
told
not to.
not to. Instead, he's told
to eat
to eat
the
the
piece
piece
of
of
writing,
writing,
the
the
scroll.
scroll. The angel saying to him,
Take
take
it
it
and
and
eat.
eat.
Nami.
It will
It
be
will be
bitter to
bitter
your
to your
stomach,
stomach,
Bleh.
but
but
sweet as
sweet as
honey
honey
in
in
your
your
mouth.
mouth.
Nami, nami.
Then
Then
here,
here,
this
this
it's both,
No.
yeah.
both, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
As a big
Mouth, sweet as honey in your mouth. Then this here is commanded.
sorry, lost my way there. Take it and eat. It will be bitter to your stomach,
Yeah.
but sweet as honey in your mouth. Then the seer is commanded, you must prophesy again about many peoples and nations and languages and kings.
Kings. Oi, oi, oi.
This is what Marx and Engels did in their subsequent works.
Oi, 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 oi.
Of course, I could not argue any further than that this was the attraction of the text of Marx and the reason why he chose it.
Monumental.
But in my view, it is an odd coincidence which fits well with Derrida's reading of Marx. In his book, he represents Marx as a messianic prophet, frequenting specters who share very many common traits with angels. 6, subtitle Marx German Ideology, 1845 to 46. A similar use of the book of Revelation, and indeed many other books of the Bible as well, is found in German ideology, probably written mainly by Marx, but with contributions from Engels shortly after the Holy Family. In their lifetime, it was impossible to find a publisher willing to publish the work in full. And even after their death, the movement that came to carry the name of Marx was rather reluctant to make the work readily available. Perhaps by that time, when Marx's and Engels's Religionskritik had become mainstream in socialist circles. The overabundance of biblical allegory seemed just too baroque. It is actually quite funny. It is a pointer. The work not only continues the Holy Family's allegorical use of Revelation, it also continues the Holy Family's critique of Bruno Bauer and the young Hegelians that we learned about above. In part 3 of volume 1, there's a long subchapter entitled The Revelation of John the Divine, or the logic of the new wisdom. The actual content of the subchapter does not echo its biblical namesake to the same extent as does the critical last judgment. Rather, it opens by echoing the Gospel of John, thus reflecting popular ideas that the two biblical books are written by the same author. This is another indication of Marx's limited interest in biblical criticism. Again, he reproduces popular notions and the use and uses the title Book of Revelation and some genre-related terminology for effect, while the actual content relates mostly to his own time. Marx and Engels named other chapters of German ideology after biblical testaments. All the New, and books such as the Song of Songs and Genesis. Other chapters, again, are named after theological concepts such as the doctrine of justification, prophets, and saints.
Doctrine of justification.
Hence, Roland Bohr argues along slightly different lines than those pursued here, that there is more to German ideology's use of biblical allegory than meets the eye of a biblical scholar. Listen to this. Dubbed Saint Bruno and Saint Max, Marx and Engels pepper their
pepper that
critique
critique
with
with
biblical
biblical
quotes
quotes
and
and
wheel
wheel
out
out
one
one
biblical
biblical
theme
theme
after
after
another
another
to
to
argue that
argue that
both
both
Bauer
Bauer
and
and
Stirner
Stirner
offer
offer
a
a
barely
fairly
concealed
concealed
theology
theology
in their
in their
reading of
reading of
Hegel.
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 But
But
perhaps
perhaps
my
my
favorite
favorite
section
section
is that
is that
is that
is that
third
third
chapter of
chapter of
Max
Max
Stirner,
Stirner,
organized
organized
in
in
terms
terms
of the
of the
books
books
of the
of the
Bible.
Bible.
Hmm.
Thus,
Thus,
we
we
find the
find the
first section
first section
entitled
entitled
The
The
Old
Old
Testament
Testament
Man,
Man,
Man.
and the
and the
second,
second
the New
the New
Testament
Testament
Ego.
Ego.
Ego. Ego.
Both have a
Both have a
discussion of the
discussion of the
economy of the
economy of the
Testament,
Testament,
Testaments.
Testaments.
Economy of the Testaments.
While
While
Genesis is
Genesis
favored
is
in
favored
the
in the
first section,
first section,
the Gospel
the Gospel
of John the
of John the
Divine
Divine
becomes the
becomes the
preferred
preferred
focus
focus
of the
of the
second,
second,
and the
and the
whole
whole
closes
closes
with
with
Solomon's Song of
Solomon's Song of
Songs,
Songs,
or the
or the
unique,
unique,
Unique. Oi.
not
not
averse to some
averse to some
delightful
delightful
satire.
satire.
Marx and
Marx and
Engels
Engels
pull apart
pull apart
Bauer's
Bauer's
spiritualist
spiritualist
appropriation
appropriation
of
of
Hegel,
Hegel,
but they do
but they
so by
do so by
invoking the
invoking the
Bible in
Bible in
depth.
depth.
End of quote.
End of quote.
Even if I
Even if I
remain to be
remain to be
convinced
convinced
about the
about the
level of
level of
depth
depth
with which
with
Marx
which
and
Marx and
Engels
Engels
invoke the
invoke the
Bible here,
Bible here.
Bohr's
Bohr's
larger
larger
argument
argument
that
that
German
German
ideologies'
ideologies'
use of the
use of the
Bible
Bible
is
is
very
very
apt
apt
philosophically,
philosophically,
is
is
impossible
impossible to
is
is
impossible to
impossible to
Disagree with.
disagree with.
disagree with.
To
To
use the
use the
Bible
Bible
against bad
against bad
theology
theology
is a good
is a
old
good old
recipe
recipe
that does
that
not
does
list
not list
depth
depth
among its
among its
ingredients.
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 Hmm.
Hmm.
7.
7.
The
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 Engels,
Book
the
of
Book of
Revelation,
Revelation,
much later,
much later,
1883,
1883,
moving into the
moving
work
into the work
indisputably
indisputably
from
from
Engels's
Engels's
hand
hand
and
and
almost 40
almost 40
years down
years
the
down
line.
the line.
We are in
We
a
are in a
different
different
framework of
framework
biblical
of biblical
interpretation.
interpretation.
entirely.
entirely.
Published the
Published
same
the
year
same
as
year as
Marx died
Marx died
after a
after a
long
long
illness.
illness.
Engels' little
Engel's
piece
little piece
entitled
entitled
The Book of
The Book of
Revelation
Revelation
could be
could be
seen
seen
as
as
dissemination of
dissemination of
German
German
historical
historical
critical
critical
scholarship.
scholarship.
It
It
introduces to the
introduces to the
general reader
general reader
historical and
historical and
ideological
ideological
criticism
criticism
of the Book
of the
of
Book of
Revelation,
Revelation,
which is
which is
exactly the kind
exactly
of
the kind of
science of the
science of
Bible
the Bible
that
that
Engels
Engels
would like
would
to
like
see.
to see.
The
The
interest in the Book
interest in the
of
Book of
Revelation
Revelation
is no
is no
longer
longer
grounded
grounded
in its
in
form,
its form,
immediately
immediately
recognizable
recognizable
to
to
19th
19th
century
century
Germans.
Germans.
Thus,
Thus,
allegory,
allegory,
sarcasm,
sarcasm,
and the
and the
aesthetic
aesthetic
approach
approach
of the
of
early
the early
works
works
are gone.
are gone.
Gone.
Engels'
Engels'
sources
sources
include
include
Renan,
Renan,
described by
described by
Engels as a
Engels as a
poor
poor
plagiarist
plagiarist
of the
of the
German
German
critics.
critics.
But very
But very
interestingly,
interestingly,
his main
his main
sources are
sources
his
are
own
his
lecture
own lecture
notes
notes
from a
from a
course given
course
by
given by
Professor Ferdinand
Ferdinand
Bennery
Bennery
back in
back in
1841 in
1841 in
Berlin,
Berlin,
where Engels
where
was a
Engels was a
student.
student.
Mm.
Whoever wants to
Whoever wants to
explore the
explore the
influence of
influence of
Messianism
Messianism
and
and
apocalypticism
apocalypticism
in the
in
thought
the
of
thought of
Engels
Engels
ought to
ought to
start
start
right
right
there.
there.
Right there.
But in a
But
different
in a different
perspective,
perspective,
this
this
scholarly
scholarly
grounding
grounding
is
is
exactly what
exactly
makes
what makes
Engels
Engels
less
less
interesting
interesting
within the
within the
context of a
context of a
reception
reception
history
history
of the Book
of
of
the Book of
Revelation.
Revelation.
Much of what
Much
he
of what he
presents
presents
is just
is
standard
just standard 19th
century
century
German
German
historical
historical
critical
critical
scholarship.
scholarship.
Standard. Skottmat.
Kitchen food,
Kitchen food,
cupboard
Kitchen
food.
cupboard
food.
food.
What
What
still
still
makes the
makes
piece
the piece
interesting
interesting
is
is
Engels's
Engels's
ideological
ideological
interpretation
interpretation
of the
of the
historical
historical
critical
critical
research.
research.
By the
By the
1880s,
1880s,
the Book
the
of
Book of
Revelation has
Revelation
become
has become
an
an
interesting
interesting
object of
object of
study
study
as a
as
window
a
into
window
the
into the
beliefs,
beliefs,
superstitions,
superstitions,
and
and
practices
practices
of an
of an
ancient
ancient
mass
mass
movement
movement
and
and
witness
witness
to its
to its
historical success. Christianity, like every great
every great
revolutionary
revolutionary movement,
was
was
made by
made by masses.
Masses.
Engels reads
Engels
the book
reads
of
the book of
Revelation
Revelation
against the
against
grain
the grain
and
and
sympathizes
sympathizes
with the
with the
seven
seven
churches,
churches,
sects
sects
over and
over
over
and
again,
over again,
who, like
who,
every
like every
revolutionary
revolutionary
movement practice.
movement practice, we can
Echo again.
echo again.
Oi,
Could you
oi, oi,
please
oi, oi.
Please.
mute? Sects over and over again, who, like every revolutionary movement, practice free love as one way of shaking off all traditional fetters. Throughout, Engels makes a virtue out of the rather deviant theology of the Book of Revelation compared to other New Testament writings. Others in his German environment found the New Testament relatively clear, but the Book of Revelation dark, mysterious, obscure. Engels has a conceptual framework that allows him to make sense of Revelation on its own terms. Hence, it is the simplest and clearest book of the whole New Testament.
Clearest book of the New Testament.
As probably the earliest text of the New Testament. The book of Revelation is an authentic picture of almost primitive Christianity, drawn by one of themselves. It documents the beliefs of a Jewish revolutionary movement in its inception. This origin also explains for Engels why we don't even know its author. Engels knows from German biblical scholarship that the various Johns of the New Testament are not the same person. Yes, even its bad grammar and Creole Greek. The origin contrasts starkly with the later development of Christianity proper, attempting to break free from Judaism and construct its own doctrinal superstructure by borrowing from Greco-Roman philosophy. A quote here. Afterwards formed into a doctrine by the addition of theorems of Philo, and later on of strong Stoic infiltrations. In fact, if we may call Philo the doctrinal father of Christianity, Seneca was her uncle.
Vilken var så ranken?
Of all these doctrinal elements, there's not a trace to be found in our book of Revelation. Of original sin, not a trace. Nothing of the Trinity. Jesus is the Lamb, but subordinate to God. In fact, in one passage, 15:3, he is placed upon an equal footing with Moses. Instead of one Holy Ghost, there are the 7 spirits of God. The contrast between the original and the second wave Christian movement explains for Engels the contrast between the book of Revelation and New Testament doctrine and theology more in general. Anyone who has read the work of Kautsky and other later Marxists on early Christianity will immediately recognize the heterodox chronology compared to mainstream New Testament scholarship, as well as some of the perspectives. I think, Kalle, that would be a good spot to sort of put a stop. What do you say? See, 1848. Thank you very much. So we've been doing between 275 and 281. Very good. The little chimney sweeper. Oh, let's get some quotes here. There's an interesting tendency here, or direction, I think is a better word. In chapter 5, a bit uncertain what page that would be, but sub-chapter 5. Yeah, you have it there, thank you. It's page 8 in the PDF, if you have that one. And if you go down to the second paragraph of that sub-chapter, trying to find out, the author of the article is pondering why Marx goes into this. What Marx gains with his genre choice, in addition to contemporary relevance, is a strong effect. There's certainly a large surplus value of meaning available in the book of Revelation, and Marx has understood how to tap this surplus and put it into service in his own production of meaning and criticism. But this strategy is not without risk, because in the end, it somehow posits Marx himself as the last link in the chain of apocalyptic prophets. And this is very true in some sense. In Marxism, which is a sort of antipodal Hegelianism, it's Hegel turned upside down. The end of history is proclaimed. So Marx would, in that sense, actually be very parallel to the book of Revelation. Something that is also claiming the end of time and the time for betterment of humankind. We go to subchapter 6. And we can read directly where the subchapter starts. It's very interesting. In a similar use of the book of Revelation, and indeed many other books of the Bible as well, is found in German ideology, probably written mainly by Marx, but with contributions from Engels shortly after the Holy Family. Their cooperative work, so to speak, it says mainly by Marx, leads to the conglomeration of the two different authors. It's a sort of hybrid monster. And I like to be a bit, use tropes here of different kinds to twist. So Marx and Engels together makes up an interesting twist of Revelation. And I think it started already here. This is the founding blocks of what later will become, as you can read here in the text, Roland Boer says, dubbed Saint Bruno and Saint Max, they equal very kindly Marx and Engels's pepper. And as you say pepper, you might as well say paper. Pepper paper.
Or does he correspond to Marx?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it does. It sounds the same.
Marx and Peter?
No, what they wrote. Paper, pepper.
Ah,
It's a long vowel and a short vowel. It's And it needs also to be longer since there are two writing the thing. It's Marx and Engels. Therefore, pepper would become paper. And I also like the connection here with papal as of the Pope. So you have three interesting connections here in this trope, this twist. The names of them in this small thing is Saint Bruno and Saint Max. And how I put pepper and paper together. It's long and short vowels. It produces, I would say, an almost interesting chiral twist of the book of Revelation. But it has some common uses. It is proclaimed the end of time in both of them. As I would say that Marx is reading Revelation, and so Engels, they see it as a cause and effect story. And this is the reason why it fits so excellently with their own philosophy. As I mentioned earlier on, Marxism is Hegelianism turned upside down. It proclaims a definite, unchangeable history. Since the Big Bang of history, there is no turning back. Of course, the commentator, to use an Wittgensteinian word, would ask, when John wrote the book of Revelation, did he meant that? I think that is questionable. But this is the reading of Marx and Engels we are talking about. We're not talking about the historical revelation. And my point here with this rather twisted argument, my chirality here is we need to understand that there's been a twist going on here. A twist that's been hanging about since Reformation. When we in an earlier lecture here mentioned Luther and Calvin, Zwingli and those reformist Protestants, we were not just solely pointing to these church founders or philosophers or theologians. We were also pointing to the time in general, because we have in this instance, a little bit before the Renaissance, a shift, a twist in thinking, a twist going from pepper to paper and going away from papal. So the whole world twists. And when Marx and Engels are reading the Revelation, the world and the understanding is already left hemisphere. Cause and effect, and the end of time in a very different way than, this is my suggestion here. This is not what you find in the article. But the end in Revelation is much less hopeful, if you like, in the Marx Engels take, which is also the understanding of that very time. This is the reason I mentioned William Blake's The Little Chimney Sweeper. He was not a philosopher. He didn't have any religious idea as such, but he naturally assumed that angels is no longer a thing. This is not something that he proposed. It was natural. Why? I would say it's because of the twist that has already been going on by the time of Blake for at least 1 century, if you start with Newton. I'd say You need to start already by the Reformation somewhere. It's already there. And it's in, to use an expression of Wittgenstein, it's in the life world. And the life world, it's not something that neither Marx or Engels uses. They do not understand the medium they're swimming in. They are like fishes. So the twist is not something that they can notice. This has been so carefully pointed out. This is also a subtle pointing out by Julian Jaynes, but even more so by the now famed, if you excuse my phrase, neurologist and Dr. Ian McGilchrist. There is a left shift, he calls it, I wouldn't call it that in this article, but it's a shift to the left hemisphere. And as we know, the whole brain is chirally shifted. The right hemisphere is a bit more like pepper. It later becomes paper with a long vowel. It's prolonged in its twisting, and actually the frontal lobe is not of the same size. You could never sort of superpose one half onto the other because they are dissimilar in every aspect. They have nothing in common at all, actually. This is in big contrast to the two sides of the kernel of a walnut, if you imagine. They look similar. If you open a walnut, you have a nut inside, and it's something you have by Christmas. They look the same, but the two hemispheres of the brain, they're completely dissimilar in every aspect. So they can do different things because of this. That twist, which is actually a most physical twist, has progressed. They go anti-clockwise against the stream. And this has been going on. So we are now, if you like, twisted to see it differently. I will give one last example of this with something out of the blue. It's the development within thermodynamics. So different, but it is a subject that we mentioned, I think, around 100 of these long series now. Something happened towards the end of the 19th century. Big discovery. The second law of thermodynamics. It is very similar. It is in the same time period as Engels' writing, 1880s, 1890s. And it turned out that the heat death will hit the universe and the universe will die. Bit like actually Brian McGreen mentioned. And this led to a wave of mass suicide. Because all thermodynamics, they got so depressed of thinking of the universe as no longer, which is a depressing thought. But I am pretty sure this is not how an end looked to the people in, for instance, the Middle Ages. Reading the book of Revelation, they had no knowledge of the second law of thermodynamics. Trust me on that one. But if they were to have known, they would not have seen it that way. Although expressed in exactly the same way. No difference in expression, exactly the same formulation, but because of the twist, it is understood differently. You bring in cause and effect, and it's a bit something that cause pushes you in the back and you push to the end. That's a very different feeling from the right brain idea of an end. Because for the right brain side, the end is also the beginning, and they are both, so to speak, Klein bottle wise connected. Oh, that was a long summary. Kalle, please come in here. You can use this.
Okay, so let's go to page 8. It's not difficult to let me see. No, okay, I think okay, it's fine, it's fine. Okay, so nice, this page here. Ah, yes, this was fun with Bezos, Patmos. So let me comment on something here. First line there on 276. Chirp, not very impressive indeed. This do chirp. Possible reference to Revelation 1917. I would actually look it up to see what is the reference. 1917. And I saw an angel standing in the sun and cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourself together unto the supper of the great God. So I think it's the fowls that would be the reference. I guess fowls because he says this Doge chirp did not resonate all the way to Patmos, where the book of Revelation was apparently written, but only to the regions of Pathos. Thus appealing more to people's feelings than to the logos and critical factors that the young Hegelians so frequently appeal to. And Derrida took also up this thing, not exactly to pathos, but this specific to Kant, this dichotomy that Kant, it was all about logic. But it's already here something of deconstruction. You have logic and pathos. I think I think Marx was perhaps okay. He was very Hegelian, but he was still much, I think, in the right side of the brain because he had this capacity of thinking in images like this and this sounds. And as Ritter did this, I think they are related in one way. You remember the Ritter paper that we the apologetic tone, and there Ritter emphasized the Shohar sound, the sound of Shohar. That would be if you emphasize music, for instance, then you get around and the tone how you read a text, then you get around this meaning fixation. Because if you when you look up a dictionary of the, let's say, Greek New Testament, okay, then you only get the meaning. But if you read with a specific tone with Shohar in mind, then you leave this fixation with the exact meaning. Like the yes, and the trumpet. So far it's not mentioned in the book of Revelation, but instead you have the trumpets, for instance, and all these references. So this, I think, Marx, in this case, I think was like Derrida, in one way at least, in this emphasis on sounds, chirp. And there is something interesting. The difference between Marx and Engels is that, did you see there's a very, very subtle difference? If you think how, so Marx calls John, what extra name does he give to John Marx? He calls him John the Seer, while Engels calls him John the Divine. So here Marx implicitly emphasizes the prophetic side of John, while Engels is the more logic thinker. So there is this. Let me go to this go to Engels. But I think still Engels is very interesting. Let me go here. So it's the last. Let me see. It's the it's the page 10 in the PDF. PDF in here. So what is interesting with Engels' interpretation? It's worth noting that he calls the simplest and the clearest book of the whole New Testament. I think he's unique, Engels, in this, to find the book of Revelation the simplest and clearest book of the whole New Testament. And I don't know, there is and then okay, so this is to remember that Engels finds it as the simplest and clearest book that is remarkable in itself, and he finds it earliest, but in this he was only following the scholarship of his day. So we have to know that in the 19th century the German scholarship said that it was the earliest book. It was written before the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, but then in the last century, in the 20th century, instead it was said it was written much later during the reign of Domitian in the 90s or 80s or 90s. So this markant shift has, for instance, if you think about the fall of Babylon that I mentioned many times in Book of Revelation chapter 17 and 18. So Engels and all the scholars of his century, they understood it as a reference to Jerusalem, fall of Jerusalem. But then scholars after in the 20th century, they said, now Babylon is Rome instead. So then they changed also the dating. So this is yes. And let me see. There is much you could comment on, but this was really fun how he interprets. Philo would have been the doctrine of father of Christianity. Seneca was her uncle. I guess that Marx was intentionally trying to be funny, while Engels was unintentionally funny. Could be. This is a wonderful text, and if you want to say something concluding.
Yeah, and no, it's. I do like the twist, and I've been affected by it, and I'm so happy for Ian McGilchrist. But I also feel that we got a wonderful toolbox with Wittgenstein to discover what tendencies makes the conclusions of, as you say, Marx and even more so Engels. I would say that there is a decidable difference between the two. Engels is also later. He continues much later than Marx and going into that direction. And we must also remember, this is interesting, the historical setting. Where is the topos? It's in England. What happened in England by that time? Maybe the biggest twist ever to happen the last 200 years. No, in that time we're speaking about Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was starting out as almost right-headed, and we know there is no doubt that Charles Darwin went from the right hemisphere to the left, and in his own biography he complains at a late stage in life that he wished that he could have remained. He became completely cause and effect. Darwinism is pure cause and effect, and it devoured him from the inside, he wrote, in a most horrific way. That was a big change, happened exactly in that time period. And it happened in England, and England was the place for these changes. So there is no coincidence. Of course, in some ways, you can interpret it, as I come upon, that Marx and Engels fled to England. But there was also there that where everything happened. it like progressed very, very quickly in England, and it became much more left, especially for Engels, as you said. I do agree. The twist is something that is noticed.
Yes, so only to summarize the things, that it was surprising to me that there are similarities between Derrida and Marx. I think that is this focusing on sounds that which go above the pure meanings.
Yes. No, Hegel and Marx are one of the inspired, especially Hegel is inspired.
No, I'm thinking about Marx
Yeah.
Marx and Derrida.
Yeah,
Marx and Derrida.
Marx is an inspired to Derrida.
But I didn't know. I thought that when Derrida wrote Spectres of Marx, that he didn't like Marx. No. Okay, he loved Marx.
No, not like either.
But okay.
But he's big. He's been inspired.
But then this other thing, that this joke about, also about pathos, and Derrida plays much on that pathos and pathos. Okay, Derrida doesn't mention that wordplay, but the thing is that in this apologetic tone, the paper by Derrida, he focuses on the also here on the tone. So it's twice.
Yes. I remember the tone voice we talked about.
So the tone comes in two ways in this paper by Derrida.
Yeah.
One is the shohar, trumpets, and then the second is actually the pathos indirectly. Pathos contra logos of Kant, because Kant emphasized logos. While Derrida wanted to put it on the same level as pathos. And Kant said that his opposers, his opponents, they were for pathos. It was something bad. But here, actually, Marx indirectly, I don't know, it doesn't say praise, but he's also against pathos in one way, because he's Kantian also. So truly Derridian is only Derrida himself. So Marx doesn't go all the way.
No.
But he comes close enough.
Something that way. Very interesting. Yeah. Why, thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl. Very interesting comments. Thank you for your support, also to cheering up this rather dense paper. And we brought out much more humor than is included in the paper, but made it a new read, almost a deconstruction, I'd say. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl. Thank you for listening in. Have a very pleasant day, morning, afternoon, or night. Bye-bye for now.